Hello friends. The day we had all been anxiously awaiting had finally arrived. It was time to lift the cabin walls. The first step was for my cousin to unload his tractor, and once completed, we began making initial preparations to perform the lift. At this point, the anticipation was overwhelming. Our goal was to get the wall about 5 feet in the air and perform some checks to make sure everything was as expected.
You know this, right? Because then we don't want it to tip over.
I can't lift. I won't be able to lift it that high. It'll be basically backing up.
Okay. All right, we're doing the lift.
All I got as far as lift. Back up.
Tom.
Once we got the all clear, we continued with the lift. We had some initial celebrations, but then realized that the lag bolts chained to the angle bracket were about to pop out of the subframe. After much discussion, we decided to go ahead and remove them because we had some other support mechanisms in place. With the lag bolts removed, we continued with the lift. Once we felt the wall was at full height, it was time to begin placing the steel ribs for the other wall. This was all happening so quickly. Looking back now, we were a little disorganized, but we continued to persevere. first rib was extremely difficult to get placed correctly, and once we got the top of the rib in, we then needed to get the bottom of the rib into the angle bracket, which turned out to be much easier, thankfully. With 16 ribs left to go, we decided to assemble the scaffolding to assist with putting them into the ridge beam. In fact, that's our hippie word of the day, which I define as equipment which should not be used by someone afraid of heights. Even with the scaffolding, the first 8 or 9 ribs proved difficult to get placed into the ridge beam because it was slightly bent due to the straps that were holding it in the middle. But once there was enough support to decrease that bend, the last 8 ribs went much easier. Once we got about half the ribs placed correctly, it was time to bolt down the angle bracket on the wall we had lifted. My mother has continuously provided us lunch as well as worked the camera throughout this adventure, so today I turned the camera back on her for a few seconds as she was preparing lunch. Our lunch was short-lived and we were back on the scaffolding in no time. Okay, so watch this next part closely. In fact, let's watch that again. Yes, friends, I now had cabin walls that were supporting themselves. Once we had placed all the ribs, we decided to screw down the first, middle, and last ribs to provide stable support for us as we began screwing all the ribs down. As we were finishing up, the gravity of the undertaking we had just completed began to sink in. It was more than steel, more than screws, more than bolts. The skyline along the Oklahoma-Arkansas border had forever been changed.